us to be interactive. So it sounds like some of you have community solar. Who participates in community solar? My house is not good. The roof doesn't face south, it's shaded. I knew that when I bought the house and was sad about it, but I participate in a sort of community solar program. Okay, so lots of people I think are very familiar with community solar. It helps increase access to solar, and that's why Solar United Neighbors is very excited about it. I think there's lots of folks who can't or don't want to add solar to their home, people in apartments, businesses, community organizations, homes, all kinds of folks. So community solar helps increase that access. And I think, as most of you know, the solar projects or solar arrays are located throughout the community, and so enable people, businesses, organizations to purchase a share or to subscribe to the program. And then for each share, you pay a certain amount per month, and then you get a credit for the amount of energy produced by your share for every month. And ideally, that all happens on your electric utility bill, so there's no extra bills involved. But right now in Maryland, that doesn't happen. There's two separate bills, and we'll talk more about that. But the legislation that we're working on will address that. So in Maryland in 2014, Solar United Neighbors was involved, I think probably with a bunch of other groups, to try to pass legislation to start a community solar program. We didn't get it in 2014, but in 2015, we were successful in getting a community solar pilot program. And I think it has existed from around 2017 and then is supposed to sunset in 2024. So we're not getting any new projects really developed right now because it takes longer than a year to develop a new project, and the program sunsets next year. So community solar developers are like, this is a pilot program, it ends next year, I'm not going to build a project. So that's a big problem. But we have legislation. I put the bill numbers in the chat, but Kristen and others have worked really hard, and we have SB 613, so in the Senate, and HB 908 in the House, that will, if passed, make community solar permanent, and they will address this issue with the billing, put it all on one bill to make it easier, more streamlined, and straightforward, and then make the program permanent so we can get a lot more community solar developed in Maryland and more people can continue to have access to community solar. I think I can probably stop there and see if there's any burning questions, but I think Laurel's going to dig in more to consolidated billing and why it's important, and sort of more of the intricacies of that.
Yeah, so I just wanted to chime in, when Brad talked about, him, trying to spread the word. Now, the pilot program actually started out for 3 years, and then it got extended to 7 years. So now here we are, the last year that we really can do something. And of course, everything, hits the fan at the last moment with policy and legislation, right? And it's really I feel as though, this is my personal feeling, is that it's a disservice to Marylanders, right, for this pilot program to have been in existence for 7 years and not many people know about it, or not even know about it, but have an opportunity to take advantage of it. And, I have rooftop solar and I have community solar that has reduced and I live in Baltimore City, that has reduced my energy costs and my energy bills significantly, right? So that's just to give some background and some history. And it took a long time and a lot of work from a lot of different people and a lot of different organizations to make this happen. Just like it's taking now to make it a permanent program. So when we talk about making it more affordable and equitable for everyone, we're also looking at workforce development. You have all of these resources starting to come down the pipe with the Inflation Reduction Act, around green jobs and things of that nature. But also in Maryland, if this bill does not pass, it's going to halt community solar from even being in Baltimore. You're not going to have any developers that want to come here because it's not going to be financially feasible for them. So those are just some of the things that I just also wanted to point out as well. So another expert around this and who works tirelessly on making or at least trying to help, different population of people access energy and make it more affordable and accessible. And she also does a lot of work around some other stuff that retains energy, like third-party supplier, but we're not going to get into that because that's a whole nother, we're going to have a whole webinar just on that. So, okay. But what Laura is going to talk about is the what Liz mentioned, a part of the bill that has consolidated billing, which will make it even more equitable for people to access clean energy. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Laura.
We can't hear you.
Thank you.
Laura,
Aren't you guys surprised in the last 2 years there isn't like a hand signal for you're on mute? Is there one? Because I think we should start it. I've been going like this and I was like, no, that's not it. So what's so cool about this year is really, I think I should hand it to Kristen because there is such a massive group working on this and she's essentially the product manager for it. Just everything. And I think that's important because there's been nothing. And what's so amazing is it went from like last year, there was this little teeny bill that we did very, very late and it didn't go anywhere. And now there's this huge, just like I would say 100 people. And really, Kristen from Maryland MDLCV is running it. So why don't you start? Because there's a lot of work to do and the bill numbers just came out, right? So I wanted to hand it off to you because this is really your baby. And I'm here, as I've said, to always support everybody because I could talk about billing forever, but it is the key, but really the bigger stuff is from you.
Oh, well, I mean, you are I know the process, you know, the subject. So, and I think the key though, is that we need to be it's always about trying to get it as short a message as possible, which is to say, I can make it in 8 words, make community solar permanent and working for everybody. And the consolidated billing is the key to that last piece, is to make it work for everybody. So I've done these like how to lobby a bunch, and it's usually very general, not a very specific. For this group, we can talk about the specifics of these committees and where this bill is. So if people, I think that if people need to know more about consolidated billing or the subject, they should talk to you. You and Liz should lead the charge, but I can go into talking about sort of the where we are in the process, and if people want me to go there, we can have it there. And please have it interactive. I will share my screen because I think it helps to see some of these things.
Mm-hmm. I think it's fine.
Yeah, so generally speaking, so the legislative process isn't bonkers. Just to be clear, it doesn't make any kind of sense. It's got its own calendar. It all happens in 90 days. And we have House Bill 908 and Senate Bill 613. They're moving through these chambers at the same time. Right now, they've gotten their bill here. They've gotten through first reader, which means we have bill numbers. And then it go to committee. And in the committee, we have a bill hearing. And in the Senate, we have a bill hearing date on February 28th. We don't have the House bill hearing yet, but it will probably be around the same time, very late or early March. Late February, early March. After that point, it will go into subcommittee, and that's where they work on the details of the bill and work through amendments. Any changes to the bill happens for the most part in subcommittee. So this is where I don't want to say, I mean, there's never a certainty that anything will happen. I think there's a lot of goodwill for this bill in both the House and Senate. There's a lot of support for it. It makes it easy to sell. Who doesn't love community solar? It makes it energy cheaper for everybody. It helps us reach our climate goals. But but the detail is always about the details, and we need to make sure that we're protecting things like consolidated billing, which makes it work for everybody, because right now it doesn't. So it will go into subcommittee, and then it will go to the full committee, and the committee will have to vote. When the committee votes, it goes to the full chamber in first the House and in the Senate, where the full chamber, either the House or the Senate, can make amendments. After they go through that period, and there really usually are not that many amendments on second reader in the full chamber. It's all worked out beforehand. Third reader is the vote on the bill. So all of this happens in the first 69 days of the legislative session. We're about halfway to this point. After that is something called crossover, and then it gets goofy. Because what happens then is the House bill goes over to the Senate and has to go through all of the same processes. The Senate bill goes to the House and has to go through all those same processes: first reader, bill hearing, subcommittee, committee, second reader, third reader, in now 2 weeks, basically. And we have to make sure that a bill goes unchanged, passes out of both the House and the Senate identically. We can get both the House bill and the Senate bill passing identically, or we can just get one, but one bill has to get all the way through this process before it can go to the governor's desk. So that's basically where we are. And so right now it's a really exciting time to be doing this lobby day, because we just got the bills, we have bill numbers, we have bills, we have co-sponsors on the bill. So people are excited for it. And we're going to get it. So then you're in the lobby day. So the things to keep in mind and please stop me if any of this doesn't make sense, or if you have any questions, or like, I know this stuff, whatever. So just keep it in mind. I like to remind people that the elected officials are absolutely public servants. They absolutely represent you. They do work for you, but it's important to remember that they're also people, which sometimes get lost in the news, that legislators are people, and they have families, and they are spending all their time away from their families during these 90 crazy days. So just understand that they're making sacrifices to be there, and they are absolutely not experts on the subject. They're experts on something. They're just not experts on what you're an expert on. And they're really trying hard, and they need to understand. Keeping in mind that legislative aides are also really important. They are your guide on this. If you meet with a legislative aide, it's as good as meeting with the legislator. Because they are the ones who are often the last voice that the legislator hear before they go to committee or before they go to the floor. So they are often really engaged in the policies. They're also working really, really crazy, ridiculously long hours, and are not appreciated are often underappreciated and overlooked. So keeping that in mind, but they are your guides. You don't have to know where anything is in the process. They can help you. You get them on your side, and they are your best friends. And I say this as a former legislative aide. I worked as a legislative aide for 5 years. You want them to be your friends, because they can be your best friends to get things through the process, to give you the information as you need it. And then there's us, right? Well, I am not a citizen lobbyist. I'm just a lobbyist, straight up paid. But citizen lobbyists, the lobby days are so important, because this is where the legislators are hearing from the people who matter to them the most. I do not matter to them the most. They're used to hearing from me. I don't matter. I can give them information, but the people they really need to hear from are their constituents and the people for whom these bills will create the impact. So you're the people who they need to hear from. You're absolutely critical to the process, because your story and why it's important to you is the most important thing they'll hear that day. When we were starting this meeting, talking about when people were introducing themselves, you talked about what was your connection to this bill? What brings you here? What brings you here today? That is what they need to hear. Why is this important to you? So when you're visiting the lobbyists, when you're visiting the legislators, you want to make a plan. The group of people make a plan. You want to introduce yourself. You want to make a connection to them. Have you met them before? Remind them of that. Do you have some like, what is your church? Are you in their district? Do you go to a church in their district? Did you go to school in their district? Do you live in a neighborhood in their district? Something to connect them to who you are and why, what makes it different. Because we're talking about people, and you're building a relationship. And whenever you meet anybody and you're trying to start a relationship, you want to find a connection point. What do you have in common? So if you're talking to a legislator and you're in their district, one of the things you have in common is where you live. And then it gets to the point of, why is this issue important to you? And that is, again, the most important thing they'll hear. Be sure to thank them, and also be sure to follow up with them, because you're building a relationship. They need to hear from you, and they need to make sure that you are somebody who they will continue to work with and look to as an expert in this issue about why it's important to you. They'll look to you, they'll talk to you, they'll come back to you, they'll say, I need to understand this, give me more information, and you are building a relationship with them. So be sure you follow up to make sure that they know how to do that. Always tell the truth as you know it. If you don't know the answer, that's great. And if you say it, if you tell them, I don't know the answer to that question, I will get back to you on it. That does two things. First, it helps to build that trust. And second, it makes sure that you have an opportunity to talk to them again, and you get that second contact. So it's actually great to leave with a to-do list of things to get back to them. Also, it shows that they're engaged. Do not assume positions about that people will be pro or con. They'll always surprise you. There's somebody who signed out as a co-sponsor of our bill in the House. I would never have expected it, but there he is as a co-sponsor. We have a bipartisan sponsorship of the community solar bill. Glorioski. So just remember that these are human. Be a good human, be polite, be respectful, keep the tone positive. It's really easy. Like, I get really snarly about some of the issues when I know too much about it, and I get really grumpy. Don't bring that to the meeting. Keep it positive. They need to leave with the impression that this is a positive, that this is moving forward. You're giving them the opportunity to be a champion, to be a hero, to do something that makes them feel good. And that makes it be positive. And to that same point, I think the thing I like to make sure people remember is, if you know that there are going to be challenges, if people are going to be arguing one way or the other, we might be fighting utilities on this one a little bit. They're going to be saying different things. We're not making their argument for them. We're making our argument. Anybody who's going to be trying to undermine this bill, their job, they can make those meetings and they can make their own arguments. You don't get much time with them. You get, say, 10, 15 minutes, maybe. Don't waste your time making the opposition arguments for them. That's what their lobbyists are paid to do. But also really be very clearly, make sure that you're paying attention to whether they say yes or whether they say something else. Or do they say no? Do they give you a clear, concise answer about a position? Or do they sidestep? Do they avoid making a commitment? And make sure that you communicate that back, because those of us who are on the ground always can do that and follow up, be like, okay, this delegate needs more work, and we can circle back around. So keep your eye on the prize and remember the message: make community solar permanent and working for everybody. So that if you're in the hallway, if you're in the elevator and somebody says, hey, what are you doing here? I'm working to make community solar. I'm working for making community solar permanent, working for everybody. And then the other thing I like to remind people of is, your job is absolutely not to change anybody's mind. You can't change anybody's mind. All you can do is give them the information, tell them your story, tell them why it's important to you, and give them the space to change their own mind and make the right decision. Make yourself available to them to provide more information. let me know, let those of us who are working on the ground know what you're hearing, and we can help provide them with information. But again, like what you're going to be doing on Monday is the most important thing that can be done to help this bill through. It's a great time to be working on it. And so that's where I am. And don't hesitate to reach out to me. This is all my information. Please use it. So that's what I wanted to make. So that's sort of my top line do's and don'ts. And I'm happy to answer any questions or go into any more details about the committee or anything else, because this is my favorite subject.
Thank you so much, Christian. That was excellent. That was absolutely like very concise and to the point. So thank you for that. Anyone have any questions for any of us? So all of you are going to show up on Monday, right?
Well, you asked for questions. I have several. One is there any, who builds the community solar projects today? And is there anything in these bills about financing of the building of community solar? The reason why I asked this is that in the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a lot of money for green banks, especially green banks oriented towards low-income people. And I know different counties got paid off in the Pepco merger bill and have small green banks. Usually, I know in Montgomery County, it's aimed at small businesses. But I was wondering if there could be something in this bill that would say Maryland should try to get, a green bank that would help the people who want to build communities solar, build it and have it, financed through the Inflation Reduction Act.
I love that question more than you could possibly know. So Liz or Kimberly or Alexis could talk about sort of the details about who's building these projects, but your question is unbelievably prescient. There is nothing in this bill. This bill simply is an enabling legislation to make the bill permanent and then fixing the consolidated billing. That is this bill. There is another bill, though. We don't have a bill number yet. We do have a sponsor for it, and it does exactly what you're saying. Not specifically through the Inflation Reduction Act, although that is certainly, there is a lot of money for this, but a couple things. So there's a bill, it's sponsored by Delegate Adrian Boafo, who has not introduced it yet, but he will. And that deals with financing for projects that specifically that support low and moderate income households and are built in places where it's more expensive to build these projects, like rooftops, like parking lots. The things where, because they're low income projects are harder to finance and are harder to, and projects on already developed land for a lot of different reasons are more expensive. So we're trying to level the playing field with the second bill around financing. And there is, in fact, a green bank in the state of Maryland that helps direct low-income money for low-income community solar projects. It's called the Climate Access Fund. It's run by Lynn Heller, who is my board chairman, and does exactly that. And so there is some conversation about whether a green bank, like what you're talking, whether Lynn's group or the Maryland Clean Energy Center, which also has a green bank function, can help direct some of this money to help support these projects. So I'll make sure that you have that information about the second bill, so that if anybody asks you about it, because they might ask you about, well, where are we going to be putting all these projects? You can talk about this. You can talk about this bill, which helps direct them to places that helps direct projects away from agriculture and open space, which is always the subtext of that question of where are you putting these solar?
Right. I mean, the White Marsh parking lot out near you in Baltimore, Kimberly, is probably the best place to put solar.
It's a fabulous place to put solar, and it's way more expensive to put it there. So let's fix that.
Are you talking about the mall where they already have, like where IKEA is?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a huge parking lot.
Very huge.
It's a waste of space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, any more questions? And you had, and to your point, Robert, there's tons of space like that across the entire state.
Right.
So and it is wasted space. And like you see, so the IKEA in White Marsh, where Robert is talking about, has a huge solar canopy, and they have charging stations. And I guess they have some type of agreement with Amazon, because Amazon has a lot of the trucks there, the EV trucks, and they plug them up there. So they have EV charging stations, and they have a huge solar canopy. And that wasn't like that about maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, I haven't been to IKEA for a while, but last time I was there, they didn't have that, and now I'm real excited.
Yeah, they have a huge solar canopy with EV charging stations, and I guess they must have some type of lease or something with Amazon. Okay, Brad.
Could you put your contact information in the chat?
You betcha.
I can speak.
Yes, you can. Yes, you may.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think I said earlier in the chat that I've been a member of Community Solar with the Neighborhood Sun for a little over a year now. Plus, I have panels on my roof that were installed by Solar Energy World because of the co-op. I got a good price on that. Now, right now, there are no open co-ops. I wish that would change. But the Community Solar, I think, is a great program. But I guess if these bills don't pass, then we're stuck with this sunset provision, which is very disappointing. Now, this lobbying effort on Monday, is that strictly in person, or can we participate by Zoom?
So there are two lobby days, two organizations that are having lobby days on the same day. So we are actually, Solar United Neighbors is going to be in person. But then you have the Sierra Club that's doing one later in the evening. And it's going to be virtual.
Okay.
So I can get that information for you and just send it to you if you prefer to do it virtually.
Well, that would be useful. I have to look at my calendar because I wasn't sure when I first started reading about this, whether I'd have to make a trip to Annapolis or could do it by Zoom. A 5-hour Zoom session might be problematic anyway, but I've done some lobbying, in the past. So I guess I'd be interested in the agenda for Lobby Day. Are there specific people that you'll be meeting with? And is there going to be, well, yeah, that would be one thing I'd be interested in. And
yes.
And I cannot cut and paste from these Zoom chats anymore. I don't know why. Is it a function of the Zoom program itself? Like this was set up by your organization. So is there something when you set up a Zoom meeting that prohibits people from cut and pasting? Because I used to do that all the time, and I haven't been able to do it for quite a while. So I need to figure out what's going on, because there's no way I can type in the information separately, without flipping back and forth. And it's really aggravating. So if I asked somebody and I said, I gave you my email address, if you can at least email me a link to the bills, because I haven't had a chance to actually read the bills. And also, I know the sponsors, there's ways of finding out the sponsors and so forth. So
I can send you, we have a fact sheet. I know Solar United Neighbors has a fact sheet with all the information about what, you don't actually, you can read the very long bill, but you can also, but there's also a fact sheet that gives exactly what it takes, it outside the legislative code, tells you everything you need to know about the sponsors and what it does.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Solar United Neighbors has one, we have one. And I will say to your point about if this bill doesn't pass, we have the sunset provision. There is another year before, the sunset, it sunsets in 2024. The key about it, it needs to pass this year.
Yeah, it has to. I mean,
must.
because
Because otherwise there'll be market disruption, because it will take more than it will take, longer, they'll have to promulgate the regulations, and so that will take time, and so there'll be a break. So it is important that we emphasize in the message,
why did they even put
has to do
sunset?
it.
Why did they even put sunset provisions in it to
They-
begin with?
Because when it first passed, however many hundreds of years ago, or, it was like it was 7 years ago, right? When it first passed, it was brand new. Nobody else was doing it. Now
Right.
everybody else is doing it, and other states are not sunsetted. Other states just have programs. So we
Right.
used to be the front runners, and now we're not. And so we need to make sure that we are getting
Right.
that's why they had the sunset, because they were uncertain about whether it would work. We know it works. We just
Yeah,
need to.
well,
make it
yeah,
work better.
we know it works. Now, given the fact that we have, a Democratic governor and administration, it should be a no-brainer that it would pass this time, but
It's
you're
not.
saying not.
No, I believe you never know.
No, you never know. I mean,
You never know. I think that it's very likely that we will get a bill will pass to make it permanent, but it's a question about how it passes. We need to make sure it is strong. We need to make sure they don't try to say, well, we don't need to make it permanent. We just need to extend the sunset. Or we don't need to make it permanent. We can make it permanent, but we don't want it. But this consolidated billing is not enough. It doesn't, that's too complicated. That will cause problems. So it's really about the details. And
Yeah.
so focusing on, we need to make it permanent. It needs to work for everybody, and it needs to pass this year.
Right. So in this executive summary, so to speak, do you also have talking points for your lobbying efforts? Like ask 1, 2, and 3, for instance.
Yeah. So Brad, that brings us into the logistics of what's going to happen on Monday. So we're planning to meet at Asbury United Methodist Church in Annapolis on the 3rd floor. We're going to have box lunches for everyone when they get there. And that's going to be kind of like where we organize. So we're going to have the materials, talking points, pamphlets, T-shirts, because we want everybody to wear, like matching shirts. So we all look like we are coordinated and as
Right.
one, right? So we got, little swag bags and stuff like that. And then I'm going to divide people up so that people can go see the different senators. So we're not all like going to the same place, because it's a short period of time. And I want to be respectful of people's time. So people may come and go. People may, they got kids, so they may have to leave early, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So I'm going to get there maybe around about between 10 and 11 to make sure. I went on, when did I go? I think it was yesterday. So I went yesterday to look at the room. It's beautiful. We have 11 parking spaces in the back of the church. And then there's several parking garage along Calvert Street,
Right.
which is like only like $1.50 an hour or something like that. So those are just some of the logistics. So you don't have to worry about bringing anything. We're going to have all the materials for you that you'll need.
Now, if I do this, I'll be coming from Rosedale. And are there any other people coming from Baltimore City that I could hook up with?
Well, I'm coming from Baltimore City. I don't know if you want to leave as early as I do, but I am. But I mean, I told you, Brad, me and you talk all the time. So you live like right around the corner from me. So
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. I got to check my calendar to see, because I'm sure I have some other conflicts. But let me see, because I would like to attend, because I'm really I'm very positive on community solar, and I've been doing my best to sell the program through the Lutheran community. And now I have people from the Episcopal Church over in West Baltimore, St. Bartholomew's. You may have seen some of their emails. So I know there's people there that are interested, and the church itself wants to participate. And I think Pertula from Neighborhood Sons already sent them some information, and so I'm really excited, about making this happen. And it is disappointing that developers can't move forward, but I understand that. I mean, it's a process, so you just can't, start something that you can't finish. That's a waste of money.
Yeah, so Brad, we'll also try to see if we have other people, other folks that are coming from Baltimore, and see if we can
Okay.
people can
Yeah.
carpool as well.
Yeah,
If not,
I'm thinking, 'cause
I can just put you in my hatch. And just-
yeah. Yeah, I
I
have,
just, I just want to make one final pitch, because we do have a bill hearing in this, at least in the Senate, and we'll get one in the House any day. I want to say that in addition to the lobby day on Monday, there is, what will be really helpful is having written testimony, send a written testimony in to support. You don't have to come to Annapolis. You don't even have to go on a video. But write a letter to the committee telling them why it's important, and get in touch with me, and we can help you get whatever information you need to make that happen, because overwhelming written testimony in support of not only making it permanent, but making it work for everybody and passing it this year. Consistent messaging around that from as many different voices as possible would be really important.
Yeah, and I think that's important. That's an important point too, because sometimes these hearings, they only have a certain amount of time with a whole bunch of bills, and sometimes some legislators can get kind of irritated if they have too many people in person, and especially when they really don't know what the issue is. They kind of, you'll start seeing them on the laptops playing spades or playing a game because they just zone out. So written testimony is really, really always powerful as well.
Yeah, we'll want to have a few people, so we'll want to figure out who and Kimberly, I sent you an email earlier about this, like getting the right people, making sure that we have the voices that we need at the testimony. But the rule of thumb around a bill hearing is you can only lose a bill hearing. You cannot win it. You can only lose or survive. And so you want to get in, be brief, get out, and do the work before and after. But so we don't want to, because these hearings are going to get, these days are going to get really, really long for them. And so you want to be as short and inconvenient as possible in the actual bill hearing itself and get them the information, but give them the information in writing. The written testimony is powerful.
I wanted to step in. That's where I was chatting today with Al, and I said, because we've been selling it in the low income communities, and it hasn't worked at all. And that's why having it all billed on one bill, I would argue, isn't even just important for the low income segment. It's kind of important for everybody, because it's a bear to sell this. Oh, and it's, you get going, and then someone says, well, how's it billed? And then you have to explain two bills and all that. But so we're getting some letters from people who have signed up for it and it didn't work. We're getting letters from people who've been trying to sell it. I'm really trying to get a one pager on why it has to be on BG&E bill, and just to really show the real life issue that if you ask everybody for a debit card or a charge card just to buy it, you've just lost a huge segment of the market.
Laurel, can we talk tomorrow about who you're talking to? Because I think
Absolutely.
I would like to, we should coordinate more about how else they can be helpful.
That would be great.
I
Do
have
you
a
think
question about your consolidated billing. You mean it exactly the way when we get one bill that has Pepco's bill and the reseller's bill, and it's all on one bill? So
Yes.
For the competitive people, they have consolidated billing right now.
Yes.
correct?
And so you want community solar to have the same opportunity as the competitive resellers.
Yes.
Yes.
And I will say, and this is, always stay positive when you're talking to legislators. Don't bring the snarls. This is where I get snarly, because we are not able to get information from the utilities to say why it is going to be expensive or complicated to give community solar the same benefit that these other third-party providers have. So
when you
we're
say,
asking questions, so we're asking, so when I'm meeting with them, I say, we're trying to get this information because we don't understand that chat. Like, we don't understand. We're trying to get information. BGE is meant to give us information. So, but yeah, you get one bill for the electrons being created and another bill for the electrons being delivered. And I've tried to use it as like, if you get, you get a CSA for your agriculture, it's like saying, I'm buying the farm share, I'm buying the produce, but I need to pay somebody else entirely different and unconnected to have the produce brought to my house. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So
When you say competitive reseller, who are you referring to?
Laurel,
Well, right now I'm using Clean Choice.
Right?
You could use just about any, in other words, in Maryland right now today, Pepco has what's called standard offer service. Most people buy their electricity from Pepco. At least 80 or 90% of the people still buy through Pepco's affiliate,
Right.
and it comes through your bill that way. But
Right.
you can also choose somebody else. You don't
Yeah.
have to use the
Yeah,
standard offer service.
I do that. I've been doing that for years. I get 100% wind
Right.
from,
Anybody who's selling
Oh.
100% wind from something else is a competitive reseller. Okay,
but how does that compete with community solar?
it doesn't compete with, well,
different-
it is, it's an alternative way to buy. Community solar is the same thing as your 100% wind.
And
You
if
can
I,
have both.
well,
But does
actually,
not
can
appear on your bill the same way.
I jump in, you guys? I'll email with both of you or anybody who's interested in talking third-party suppliers like a Clean Choice or a WGL, Clearview, Inspire, Green Mountain. What's neat about community solar is it's legit. It's real local new solar electricity being fed into the grid. And it's at same rate as regulated rates. It's cost effective and it's legit. And it's on one bill. So it's super convenient. You pay your BG&E bill and you also pay for your community solar, hopefully, if this gets passed. But if anybody wants to, I'm going to put my email in here to talk about the third-party suppliers and just some things you should look out for, because it's not using local electricity. And I'll just end it there. It's using something called a REC. But community solar is a game changer because we're going to be building exactly what we want, new, clean, local energy going right into our grid. And you don't have to put it on your roof. And then what is neat is the state really wants lower income households to get this huge discount. They want low income households to participate. And that discount can be 25% for a family who, let's say, makes really low income and they're struggling with their bills. What a cool thing, one, to not be able to be overcharged, but also to get this terrific discount. So making community solar work for everybody is really the key message there, and getting the billing done. But I'll put my email in there and you guys, we can talk about third-party supplier offline.
Yeah, and to
If you're interested.
in the future, Laurel and I are going to coordinate a third-party supplier specific webinar where, because people get third-party supplier and community solar mixed up all the time, and it can be very confusing. So this is to help demystify some of the myths and really educate the community about what the difference is and how, it really works and the benefits of it. So that'll be in the future. So, it'll probably be after session. And then also someone mentioned about the co-op. I'll be launching another co-op probably in late spring.
right?
Yeah.
One more question, getting back to the person who just spoke about low income people. Right now, there's not enough capacity in the community solar arena for all these people to participate, is there? I mean, you need to build more farms in order to accommodate all the people that you want to include, if I'm not mistaken.
so just as one of the other changes that this bill is making is actually increasing the requirement for the amount of energy that must be reserved by every single community solar farm, unless it's actually like owned by a specific community or neighborhood or church, or it's like unless it's actually owned by the subscribers.
Right.
it has to reserve 40% of all of its energy produced for low and moderate income Marylanders and those in overburdened and underserved communities, which is important because it means that the people who really, for whom that this program was really intended to help, will benefit the greatest, will be able to
That's-
benefit.
Yeah, that's an interesting
So,
thought. I never.
Including like there are people who are in overburdened and underserved areas that are not low income, and there are people in areas that are not overburdened, and there are people who are low income who are not overburdened and underserved communities. So it makes sure that everybody who is
Yeah.
meant to be served is able to get the service.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't realize that was the original intent of the program.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
It makes
So we feel-
sense.
It's that we were intentional about making it very inclusive for everyone, not being exclusive, but being inclusive of what it is that we're trying to do. So it is 7:01, and this has been a very, very good conversation. I hope to see some of you on Monday, and thank you to my co-hosts, Christian and Laurel and Liz, and my back in person, Alexis. Thank you all so much. And hi, Jim. I want to say hi to my friend Jim, who is in Chestertown, Maryland. So he and I hung out a couple times during the summer. So I wanted to say a special thanks to him. And I'll be in contact with some of you, maybe about doing some more testimony, whether it's written or in person. Okay. So thank you all for your time, and you all have a good night.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.